We haven't yet. We're getting to there. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
In a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. The agenda is approved as written. There were some minutes from September 13th that were, they were quite substantial. Are there any changes or amendments to those minutes that haven't already been submitted to staff? Okay, then do we have a motion for the minutes? We have a first, do we have a second? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes with the approval of the minutes. There are no consent agenda items tonight, so we will skip that and go down to administrative session. We don't have any public hearing items or legislative session tonight, so just the administrative, which will just be discussion, and I don't anticipate any, there are no votes for the remainder of the meeting except to adjourn, so. We'll start with reframing downtown and then go into active transportation plan, 1600 South Corridor Plan, Station Area Plan, the General Plan, and North Main Street Plans, all presented by staff.
You're just pushing the wrong button.
So I'll just let you go
Yeah.
through that at whichever pace you'd like to, and we'll
So
follow along.
we want to just start out, especially as we have some newer members, talking about the where plans fit, what plans are, how everything works. You can also press the buttons on your mics if you want to turn them off, and so you don't have to crank them up in front of you.
So they don't stay off for ours.
They don't go off?
No.
Really? Well, there
We
you
want
go.
to make sure the city council does not whisper up here and not get it on the minutes.
Well, we might want to ask you some questions too.
Yes,
so.
please do. So we have a lot of plans in the city. These are some of those plans.
Oh, good. Is it going to be multiple choice? Is it going to memorize?
So we look at planning and implementation. Or basically, the work we do as a city kind of falls into two categories. We plan to do things and we do things. On the top of this chart, above the red line or above the fold, is planning, and really the plan that lives at the top and establishes the policy that governs the other plans. So the one plan to rule them all is the general plan. And out of the general plan come all of our physical plans, like our water plans, sewer, streets, parks and recreation, transportation. All of those feed into 5-year capital plans, which we use to budget over the next number of years what we're going to do. But those are basically the things that live above the planning line. Below that is the implementation and everything we actually do to get these plans done. And those fall into a number of categories, as you can see there. The real question that becomes interesting, especially as we talk to people and as we review these plans and as people and citizens experience the process of planning implementation, is where do these things fall, especially in our new boards and commissions framework. So this is the quiz. It's not a how many of those plans can you list quiz, but it's a where does it live quiz. So we have construction plans for a park, actual like construction drawings that a contractor is going to use to build the park. Where do they live?
Like between regulatory and programs and actions, that area? Is that what you're asking
Well,
about?
where on this chart, where would you peg, what slot would you put those in?
Put which piece in, sorry?
A park, construction plans for a park.
Master development plan.
Yeah, I'd say programs.
Programs or capital improvement. Yep. Moderate income housing plan.
Uh-huh. That was fun. Regulatory?
Probably, because it could fit there, even if you say it's not. It
It's
could
a-
fit there.
It's a
right?
general plan policy. It lives all the way at the top of the city. It is not regulatory.
Okay.
It
But
establishes.
Sometimes it's regulatory, because there is a regulation, you have to have a certain amount of
Well, it's not a land use ordinance. It doesn't actually create any regulatory requirements on people in the city.
Okay.
It is a state law that tells us we have to do it, but it's not part of our city code. It's part of the general plan.
So it may inform policies.
Inform like regulations, yes. The new drama program that Parks and Rec is doing. Programs. What about a building maintenance plan? That's a hard one because it could be in 5-year capital improvement plan because we have an asset management system for all of our buildings that tells us when the HVAC system here needs to be replaced or when a roof needs to be replaced, and so those get kind of funneled down into the annual capital improvement plans. What about off-street parking requirements? How many parking stalls do we require people to build when they're building McDonald's?
Okay, that sounds regulatory.
Definitely.
Yes. I got one.
Museum exhibit schedule.
Isn't like when they rotate.
Yeah, they can tell you what's going to be in the step-down gallery next year at this time. Yep, programs. What about the PAR board? Where does the PAR board live? The Parks, Art, and Recreation Board.
Programs.
It really lives above the fold.
Is it?
It's a policy board that adopts, that makes recommendations on adopting the Parks Master Plan, the Arts Master Plan, other master plans, and then consults on the implementation of that. That's kind of a weird one that we're still trying to place. So those are just an introduction to how plans work, where they come from, why we have them, and everything that we're going to discuss with you tonight really lives up in this general plan to master development plan realm. Because some of the plans are rather general. Some of them are specific, like in Reframing Downtown, there are some recommendations for options as to how we could reconstruct or reconfigure Main Street to accomplish some of the goals of the plan. But all of these things definitely live up in these top two categories. And Carla's going to start off and talk to you about where we're at with the Reframing Downtown plan.
Okay. That's one the wrong way. Okay, so Reframing Downtown is kind of what we call a small area plan. It fits just for a specific area of the city. The Reframing Downtown actually was the kickoff was in just this spring, right after I started, as a matter of fact. It was one of the first things I got to work on, so it's near and dear to my heart. The Reframing Downtown, the study goes from 400 north to 800 south. And currently right now we are working with a group out of Colorado Design Workshop. They've done a ton of work here in Utah. I think they probably know some of the cities in Utah better than the people who live here do, as far as the amount of work that they've done here. So right now they are coming up with some draft recommendations that are being circulated among our core city administrators and sponsors of that. From there, as they're more refined, they will go out to our larger stakeholder and focus groups. And you guys have participated in some of those, and so you'll be seeing those. They will be here to visit in November, probably. I think it's actually going to be more closer to December with the holidays, and they're going to kind of kill two birds with one stone for another plan that we'll talk about in a few minutes, to do some one-on-one meetings about the recommendations and the goals, and kind of start honing those down as we talk with the city council elected officials. A draft plan will be out for review in first quarter of 2023, and you guys will get to see all that and put in some impact on that. So this is one of the main components that they came up with. This is kind of the overview. We'll look at it into a little bit more as we go through. They came to our farmers market and did a really great outreach. We had a really great turnout of people coming and talking, and what this was kind of one of the conversation starter pieces based upon what we got from the survey. So they did a survey, and we got almost 1,400 responses. That's huge for a public involvement type of survey. I mean, I've worked in much larger cities that haven't gotten anywhere near that amount. So we were really excited about that. So the reframing downtown, the scope of that, like we said, is from 400 north to 800 south, and about a block east and west as we go along the corridor, taking into account, you know, the movement back and forth along the corridor. The reason we're kind of focusing on Main Street right now is it's kind of a very crucial time for what's happening in the city as far as economics go. We've made a lot of changes in the last few years, and as we get ready to talk about some definite policies and some kind of vibrancy for our downtown, we really wanted to get some good professional help to talk about how we wanted to go through all of this. So, like I said, they got almost 1,400 responses. We're here, we're actually a little bit further down now. Did we move it? Oh, yes, we did. Okay. So we are now at that blue arrow. We've had our meetings, like I said, with they did our presentation to the farmers market, have met some focus groups, and now we're going through the preliminary recommendations. We did have a ton of focus groups, walking tours, that we had some really great input from and involvement from businesses, property owners, citizens, elected officials, our partnering organizations of UDOT and UTA, all came in. We had really good input from all of them. So one thing these are kind of the main things that they were the findings of this, is that most of the people who are coming downtown, that they're coming anywhere between several times a week to a few times a month. Those are our two main components. 21% of people who responded said they come down here daily, though. So that's a fairly significant chunk of people who are coming downtown daily. And it may be just to drop off books at the library, or it may be to pick up their prescription at Walgreens, or whatever it may be, but they are coming downtown. As you can see on the last one, 21% is the main reason of community services is the main reason people are coming down. Civic center, library, splash pad, police, whatever it may be. So that's the main draw for people coming downtown. Events are a big one, farmers market, arts festival, those types of things are big ones. And 89% of people drive to downtown, which is kind of funny. But then we also have people who, are a block away and may walk over with their children. But 89% of people are driving, which is a whole issue on itself with 89. So as they talked about and they went through the survey, the one thing they found is that 56% of people feel very positive about what's downtown. Our libraries, our small businesses, historic buildings, and that small town, quaint, beautiful feel. Those were the things that really resonated with people. Things that were seen as not necessarily positives or in need of improvement. Allen's Block, as it just is kind of sitting waiting for some stuff, and it just looks like nothing's happening right now, whereas behind the scenes there are things, but the general appearance is that nothing's going on. That it's somewhat disconnected as far as you're moving down the corridor, it changes in feel as you're moving down, traffic and parking, and that there aren't enough things to do. 564 people said that they were somewhat satisfied, and 449 said they were satisfied. So that's a fairly good number of our respondents feel positively about our downtown. That there are not enough events is definitely a big thing. So talking about programming and how that will fit in with what we're doing. And the events that are downtown may not be completely satisfactory, or they may not appeal to all members of our community. There may be very family-oriented, but there may not be a lot for our youth to do, or if you don't have families, there's not a lot to come downtown for. One thing that we heard throughout this study is that the small town feel. And so we kind of had to hone through those responses to kind of figure out what exactly does that mean. And the things that were brought up more often than not, were art, the character, and food as being something about that downtown feel. As you can see here, this kind of enumerates it a little bit more. Almost 300 references to art, almost 200 references to historic, and then a combination of food and drink as being a big one too. And the one thing that we heard more than anything else is we want more restaurants and entertainment downtown. So, before I go on, so that is what a lot of the recommendations are focusing on. How do we make Art City more than just a name, but really incorporate that and have that be a motif that runs through everything we do: the food, the entertainment, the draw for downtown. So you'll be seeing that a lot more as we go through that, and the recommendations are very consistent with what we've been seeing here, and you'll be, as we narrow those down and refine them a little bit more, you'll be getting a lot more information about those. Any questions about this before I turn it over to Josh to chat about that funnel active transportation?
Do you know anything about what would be happening with the Rivoli Theater or the pharmacy?
Yeah, so the pharmacy we don't, because that's kind of happened in the last little bit, and so that's kind of wasn't in the scope. But the Rivoli Theater has been, the woman who purchased it is, I couldn't think of her name, Melissa? Melissa actually was involved in the focus groups of talking about the programming and the things that we can do there, and really using it not only the historic front of it and making it attractive that way, but also just a great draw for various types of art and performances for the downtown. So she's been active and involved, and we're really excited to have. She's got some great ideas. And there's a bunch of other groups, members of the Public Art Committee, who deal more with performance, music, theater, those types of things, that are really active and excited to partner with her to do some fun things at the Rivoli. So I'm excited.
What's the capacity on that theater?
You know what? I don't know what it is now, and I don't know what her plans are, if she'll be kind of reconfiguring it a little bit. So we're just kind of waiting to see what will happen with all of that. So.
That's good to hear. There's good things happening.
I know. I'm so excited. The Rivoli. I worked in downtown Salt Lake for a long time when we did the Capitol Theater, and that was, between being the thing I loved the most, it was also the bane of my existence at the same time. And so it was just, yeah. So I really am committed to making Rivoli lots of fun since I lost my battle in the Utah Theater. But anyway, I'll get over it. Okay, Josh, it's all you.
Do you guys have any questions about?
Yeah, any other questions? That's okay.
Okay. Just me.
Next is our active transportation plan. We've been in process, feels like a very long time since we've been working on this. I think we convened the steering committee in the fall of 20, selected a consultant team in the spring of 21, and we have a draft. We received a draft in June. We've been working through the process of bringing that forward from staff to our boards and commissions, to planning commission, to city council, and we're really working on right now addressing staff concerns and working towards getting a united position on this plan among all the different departments and staff members. So it is, it's a great plan. It's well done, well written, and I think well justified, but we are continuing to spend time to make sure that it's something feasible, to quantify the benefits, the cost benefit of the investments that are proposed in the plan, and to better quantify how the proposed improvements to our active transportation system could be funded and maintained over the long term. So the network as proposed results in, I think, close to 90 miles of facilities. The biggest chunk of those are shared use paths or off-street pathways and bicycle boulevards, which are kind of quiet neighborhood streets that have low traffic volumes and have traffic calming on them that prioritizes biking and walking. There's also a good component of separated bikeways on some of our higher traffic and streets where we want to provide protected, separated facilities for cars and for active transportation users. The recommended network really creates a well-connected grid of active transportation facilities across the city, ranging from on-street bike lanes to the shared use path we talked about along Hobble Creek, along the foothills, and connecting major destinations and community resources throughout the city. One of the major things that we found, I guess I didn't put that slide in. One of the major things we found as we did this plan is that the number one thing that people wanted this plan to accomplish was to fill gaps between origin and destinations, like their homes and stores, their homes and schools and parks, to really provide a safe and comfortable way to move between all of these areas, not relying solely on an automobile. The plan looked both at the network in terms of linear improvements, the paths, the types of facilities we need to provide to get from place to place, but also looked closely at the specific spot improvements, so the small area fixes we need to make or improvements we need to make to make our network work. Because if you don't improve crossings at Main Street or 400 South or other areas of concern, then we still have barriers preventing easy and safe and comfortable access across the network. The plan anticipates or prioritizes a series of both spot and corridor improvements, and prioritizes that based on certain criteria that were developed by the steering committee in cooperation with our planning consultant. So as we further quantify and distribute the cost of those proposed facilities across different funding sources, from UDOT to federal funds to our internal funds to roads that are going to be reconstructed anyway, what we're calling like synergy projects, as we're restriping or repaving or reconstructing roads, that the cost of these improvements on their own sounds like a big number, but in comparison to the overall cost of some of the big projects we do is a relatively small incremental addition. So all of those things together, we're trying to provide a very, very clear picture of how this plan can be accomplished and implemented. We don't want to put a plan on the ground that isn't, or put a plan out there and adopt it that's not feasible and doesn't have much chance of being adopted and being implemented. So we're doing that, as well as working through all of the high-level policy questions that come with adopting a plan that really represents somewhat of a wholesale change in the way we consider transportation planning in our city, and getting everyone together on a plan that we can bring forward with a united recommendation to the PAR Board, Planning Commission, and to City Council. Any questions on that? Hoping that will be soon. 1600 South Corridor Plan. We talked about this a little bit previously, but we now have essentially a draft final document for some elements of the plan, like the 1600 South Corridor Plan. Regulating plan on the left shows proposed land uses and proposed transportation connections, trails and street connections within and into and out of the study area. The land use plan essentially congregates commercial uses, the highest intensity commercial uses adjacent to the freeway and adjacent to the Canyon Creek corridor or Canyon Creek Parkway corridor that lines up with 1200 West at 1600 South once it's completed. That will be a hub for regional commercial, similar to the type of uses if that are present in the Canyon Creek farther to the south, but designed in a way that's more reflective of Springville's character and creates a place that's nicer to be. We also have smaller nodes of commercial uses over here along the intersection of 1600 South and SR 51, and then neighborhood scale commercial or village, what we're calling village mixed commercial, surrounding those areas, and then some mixed use nodes in key areas in the corridor, like in this area, where we have lifestyle type, village type uses tight around key intersections. The transportation plan builds on our existing transportation master plan and suggests how those streets may connect interior to the planning area and make those connections to connect into the larger city and regional transportation network, so that we have multiple ways to get in and out, that there's not a concentration of traffic on any one single large street, but that the traffic is well dispersed and the network is well connected, so there are, again, lots of options in terms of moving through the area.
Josh, for those, the green dashed lines, is that trail?
Those are active transportation facilities, trails, off-street facilities. Like this is the Dry Creek Trail that will continue basically from 1750 West to SR 51, and then a planned separated facility along 1600 South, the partly existing and planned trail along 1200 West, the rail trail along the Tintic corridor, as well as potential rail adjacent trail on the Sharp corridor, and then trails through existing riparian and kind of sensitive lands farther south into the project. We're trying to overlay a system of pedestrian grade separated trails, as well as high quality pedestrian and bike facilities on some of the major transportation corridors, and then connect all those together with a series of green spaces and natural and open spaces, utilizing some of the natural areas and wetlands and other types of riparian areas that we have in the planning area.
So the trail along 1600 South itself is separated or protected?
Yes, it's behind so it's a 10-foot trail. It's actually planned currently to be on the north side of the street, with the potential for protected or enhanced intersections at some of the major crossings to prioritize and make those crossing movements safe, especially on 1200, 950, some of those other streets. The proposed cross-section in this plan does have additional facilities on the south side of the street. Those are outside of the scope of the UDOT project that's currently in design to reconstruct the 1600 South corridor, and those frontage improvements will come with development. Right now, the UDOT's project only has enough right-of-way to essentially go to a little bit behind the back of curb on the south side of the right-of-way. But as the corridor develops, the development will continue to make those improvements on the south side.
We have at least 3 trails that are terminating at SR 51. Do we have anything that will run along the highway?
So SR 51 in our transportation plan is a arterial with a trail. So that trail you see in Spanish Fork to the south will continue up and through and into Main Street.
Okay.
Any other questions on very cursory look at the 1600 South plan progress? We're anticipating this will come to you for an initial look before the end of the year, but I think more realistically, it may be that January before this gets to you.
Are those red dots roundabouts, or are they just red dots?
Those are just red dots signifying kind of node areas.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the symbology is not entirely clear.
Okay.
And then Carl will take you through the rest of the items.
Okay. So, as Josh was talking, one thing that just kind of keeps coming up in my head, and I want to point out to you, is while all of these plans have their own little geographic area that they may be looking at, or a specific subject matter, the synergy of them is so crucial. So there's not one plan that we talk about that we don't talk about how all the other plans fit in with it. And that will be very apparent as I kind of talk about these next ones that are right now just in the very initial stages. Some of them haven't even fully commenced. But the commingling of all of these plans is so crucial, and we don't ever talk about these plans in silos. They are always talking about how are they going to intersect, how does this affect our active transportation, how is this going to affect our capital improvements plan. All of these things are work together. So this is an area. This shows when we talked about our moderate income housing plan last time, we talked about House Bill 462. In addition to the moderate income housing amendments that it made in that, it also talks about these station area plans. So station area plans are, once again, something that we are told by the state legislature that we will complete. And ours has a little bit of a different time frame because our front runner station does not currently exist. It's still in the planning stages, but we are still required to do them by doing it before we are required to have it done before the station is in operation, and so we are partnering with UTA. So the station area plans, we are required to look at the area in a half-mile radius of the proposed location. And the proposed location is somewhere right here, around here somewhere. So that's where you get this green ring. A lot of this, like I said, UTA is leading this planning effort, and this coincides with their work on the sharp and tintic lines to get those agreed upon with the railroads to allow for front runner to run on those lines. So, as I stated, the 462 requires these station area plans, and they don't just say you do them, they say this is what you will do in them, and the areas that we have to specifically address. One is we have to talk about the availability and the affordability of housing, and how planning in this geographic area can increase those. We also have to talk about promoting sustainable environmental conditions, enhancing access to opportunities, whether that be employment, whether housing, transportation access, whatever that may be. And then, of course, increasing transportation choices and connections. So we have to have an overall vision. We have to have a map that outlines all of this, and then an implementation plan to put the recommendations and the vision into effect. As I said, UTA is leading the area, or is leading the charge on this. They actually were the ones that did the procurement and the contracting with the consultant. And then we're also working with Property Reserve and Suburban Land Reserve, as they own much of this land. is owned by them. So as the main property owner there, we of course wanted, felt it was crucial to include them. They have all of this and all of this.
Side question.
Yes.
Maybe you'll get to this. So we make a station area plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And say UTA is ready to move forward. They're like, okay, station's coming, we're building it, but those landowners aren't ready to change the use of their lands. Does that throw a hiccup into things, or do we?
We're
move
hoping
forward?
we're hoping to kind of mitigate any of that by having them there from the beginning, to help. They are in our meetings regularly. We meet bi-weekly to talk about that, so we can mitigate any surprises or hiccups as it comes to implementing this plan. Because they are such large property owners, and not only in the amount of property, but just in the impact that they have statewide. They've got deep pockets and are and have some ideas of what they want to do, and we want to just make sure that all of that works. So it was a very concerted effort to make sure that they were involved in the process from the
Do you
beginning.
feel like
and all
it's
this.
becoming an amicable thing to them?
Yes, and they've been good. We've always been in conversations with them as large property owners, and as they've developed other areas around, and they have always been very open and willing to just talk with the city, and the city's expressed their concerns. They've expressed theirs. We've never ever had any type of relationship other than amicable and a good working relationship with them, and they were more than happy to be involved in the process and wanted to be involved in the process. And so my feeling is we've just had our initial kickoff meeting, and then our initial first real meeting today was that the dialogue is there, and we have a really good opportunity to do some really good things.
So you're pretty confident that it will move forward as planned?
Since we don't really have a plan yet, yes.
Well, I mean,
She's like, no.
there's some pretty detailed plans out there.
There are, and they have their plans, but I definitely am firmly believe that there will be plenty of room for a way to work together and to compromise and to develop a really good workable plan for all parties involved. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. So there's that. And like I said, we just had our internal kickoff meeting on October 5th, and then we had our first real meeting today, and had a really good discussion about making sure that we had a really good, strong public involvement component as we're moving forward with that. So nothing, like I said, very initial stages, because we're coming into that big black hole of the holidays where nothing really happens. We won't be meeting in December. We'll be meeting again they will be coming out here as part that we have the same consultant working on the Main Street Corridor study as are working on this plan, and so they will come out in December and kind of be able to kill two birds with one stone, meet locally with people here to kind of talk about both plans. So we'll move with that. So this is the granddaddy of all plans, the general plan. And this is, once again, another mandate from state law. A little bit more wiggle room in how we can do this, but still a mandate from the state that we need to have a general plan. Typically, they're kind of weird. They have a scope of approximately 20 to 25 years, but should be reviewed and updated every 5. We have not reviewed and updated ours since about 2015, so we're right in line to definitely need to look at ours. General plans have a couple of required components. One of the required components is a land use element. The other is a transportation element. We now have to include water as part of the general plan, and then also the moderate income housing, which can often be a standalone section. Sorry, if you tied my hands behind my back, I couldn't say anything. And so we've already presented that, and that will be incorporated into the larger planning effort. Our community board is going to serve as our primary steering committee for that plan. Josh has already been working with them quite extensively to kind of educate them on the general planning process, the importance of a general plan as an overall vision and guiding policy document for the city. And we're really excited to kind of get down into the weeds. This is my favorite kind of stuff, so I'm kind of weird, but I love this stuff. We do have our RFP, and our general scope has been finalized, and we'll be sending that RFP out for responses, and likely will not kick that off until first quarter of 2023, just because the process takes a while. We do have the holidays coming up. So that's what's going on with that. Then this is one that is this is just like in the baby stages. It's not even walking yet. The Mountain Land Association of Governments announced some specific funding called the Technical Assistance to Government. So they're the MAGTAG grant, and providing technical assistance to cities to do plans that they are not required by law to do. So they aren't going to help us pay for a general plan, but they will help you do like a small area plan or an economic analysis or something. So since we already had the Main Street corridor study looking at 400 north south, we wanted to, and then the 1600 south corridor plan looking at a major interchange coming in on that end of town, we realizing that poor little north part of Springfield wasn't getting any love. So we applied for a grant. Actually, it's a process. We had to send in a letter of intent that we want to apply for a grant. Then from there, they will invite you to apply. Those invitations will come out in December. We'll apply for the grant. The money, the announcement on the awards will be made in spring, and then the funds will actually be allocated usually around June or July to match the end of the fiscal year. They want to get those out usually by the end of the fiscal year. So the cities are going to be awarded grants based upon a point system. A match of 5% is required. Excuse me, a match of 7% is required, but if you do a match up to 13, you get more points towards that. So we have committed to a match of 13%, and we'll be looking at the 1400 north to 400 north to look at the development along there. And it won't just be along Main Street. It will go further down the corridor as well, as kind of the North Gateway area. So that money has not been guaranteed yet, but we feel very strongly that we will be in good contention to get one of those grants and to be able to move forward with that. So that's where we are there.
It's my understanding that they have a limited amount of money, and that has to be spread over all of the communities in Utah. So
they do have a limited amount of money, but they have a really good amount of money. So the funds right now, they're not going to be these big ongoing. They're hoping that it will be based upon Wasatch Front Regional Council. Does a very similar program. In fact, MAG has copied their program after Wasatch Front's Technical Assistance to Government grants. And that has been ongoing funding. Wasatch Front is able to do that. They've been doing it for probably, the last 10 or 12 years? Yeah, 10 or 15 years now. And so this is the first year that MAG has had that same type of funding source, and they're looking that it will, based upon the success that Wasatch Front has had and the interest that the communities in the Mountain Land Association of Governments region has had, that will hopefully be an ongoing funding source. But there is a significant amount of money out there, and so we think that they'll be able to.
Wasn't that something like 50 million or?
Yeah, so it's a good chunk, but once again, like you said, it's not an ongoing pool at this time. But they felt that they would be able to make significant dent in the amount of that they're awarded based upon the grants and the interest. So, and I think that was their the whole point of doing the letter of intent rather than just reaching out and starting with a grant application right away, but to be able to see what kind of monetary requests there were out there and how they will be able to divide those up. But we've had good contact and have had good discussions with MAG and feel that this is the kind of plan that they are looking at doing, that it fits their criteria. So once again, as we go through all of these, they are all so very much intertwined. When we talk about Main Street and walkability, it's the connections with the active transportation plan and what have they got set aside or delineated in the active transportation plan that coincides with the kind of walkability and bike lanes that we want to have along Main Street. When we talk about the station area plan, walkability and connections to the transit-oriented development throughout the rest of the city. The Main Street, same thing, walkability along that section of Main Street and how it will be synergistic with what's going on the south end of Main Street. So there, like I said, I just really want to, as you guys have these plans come before you, to just kind of keep that in mind, the amount of synergy and interconnectedness of these plans and the general plan as the overall that will kind of just to kind of tie it all in together. So that's what we've got. Any questions about any of this that Josh and I can answer for you? Or
Can you remind me timeline for each of these items that we discussed?
You bet.
What's kind of the order in which we will be dealing with them in any sort of way?
That's a really good question. 2025, you should see the active transportation plan. I'm sorry, I was kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Sorry.
Make it a 10-year
I
project.
know, really. That may be our 10-year plan. You will probably see between the active transportation plan and the Main Street plan, you'll probably be seeing those the soonest as far as in some component. The one will be the initial draft, and then the kind of final draft for the active transportation plan. Transit-oriented development is kind of a little ways out. You'll probably start seeing that in chunks beginning in the spring, and at least some sections of it or some discussion about it. A general plan will be, it takes a lot of time to do a good general plan, so we're anticipating that one's probably going to be at least a year before we're looking at any type of adoption and real narrowing down on that one. And then this one will probably, North Main Street, as soon as we know about it, we'll start working on it, but with the timeline, it won't be till, very likely third or fourth quarter of 2023. So that's kind of, did I get all of them? I think. And 1600 South is you'll be seeing that one as well. So kind of those will probably be the next three that you're going to really be focusing on: 1600 South, active transportation, and downtown Main Street.
Josh, you probably mentioned this, but do they have a timeline on 1600 on the interchange itself for 1600 South?
Construction starts on package, the package one, which is frontage roads and the spring.
Right.
And they hope to be completely out of the project and done by early.
Yeah, so that's UDOT's timeline, and so ours will move somewhat along with that. Hopefully be a little ahead of that. Okay.
And if you get the grant money for North Springville, how fast do you have to move on that in order
We-
to use the grant money?
They haven't outlined how long we have to spend that money, but we want to, because it kind of fits in with everything that we're doing now, we will probably, as soon as we find out what we're doing on it, we will want to start working on that probably late summer of 2023, with the funds coming out in end of June, 1st of July. We'll want to get on that right away. So that's kind of the timeline for that. Okay? All right. So that's it. That's all we got for you. So if you need me, I will be in my cubicle planning something.
Hopefully nothing too diabolical. Okay, any other items from the staff before we conclude? Mm. That's great.
Congratulations.
And so when they schedule that, I really can't take any credit other than I submitted them, because they both were completed before I started, but,
But I wouldn't have done, I wouldn't have submitted them myself.
so, yeah. So I did
Just
get- I
take
did-
the credit and
Well,
run.
thank you, I did get them submitted, and so as soon as they determine when that date will be, it will be a virtual award ceremony, they don't do them live anymore, but we'll send that out so that you guys are, if you're able to attend, it's kind of funny, they're like, whatever day we do, it will be 11:30 to 1. So,
Which project?
so it was, the Westville Central Neighborhood Plan, and then the Lakeside Landing Special District overlay.
Oh.
So, one was, I can't remember which one was it, one received an achievement and one received a merit.
Wow.
Very
There
cool.
were 2 separate categories. So, yeah,
Wow.
pretty exciting.
Congrats.
Yeah, we'll have to get a red carpet for you to stand on
I know, yeah.
during the virtual. Yeah, yeah.
I don't need a lot. I don't-
She prefers a blue carpet.
If we're gonna start talking football, it's adjourned real fast. November, we only have one meeting. December, we only have one meeting, correct? Because of holidays. So 2 meetings remaining in 22, and then we're back to normal. Okay,
Thanks.
all right. Do we have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned. I don't have a gavel. I really wish I did sometimes. It'd be fun.
Yeah.